Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers win it in overtime by a score of 4-3 in Edmonton, and it's JT Miller who gets the game-winning goal in overtime, and it's a comeback for the Rangers. They were down by 2 goals heading into the third. That is now the second multi-goal comeback of the season. They only had one all of last season, and they got it in the second to last game of the year after they were already eliminated. It was a game against the Panthers. And this is actually their first multi-goal comeback win in the third period since the Stadium Series in February of 2024 against the Islanders. So the Rangers have been showing some grit. And obviously there had been some bad games mixed in where, the effort wasn't up to the standard that you're looking for. But through 12 games, they are playing mostly hard under Mike Sullivan and, not giving up when the going gets tough. And so I think this is probably the most satisfying win of the season to date. Again, pretty small sample size. Rangers have been very good on the road. They're now 5-1-1 on the road. Of course, the home struggles are a thing, and they'll have to deal with that in a little bit. But this now has a chance to be a pretty good road trip after a horrible start. I mean, just a terrible loss to Calgary. They win a game against Vancouver, which they played pretty well, but it wasn't a game that was going to get you overly excited, especially with no Quinn Hughes. But hey, against Edmonton, of course, a really good team, a team that, has reached the Cup final the last 2 seasons. It has, Connor McDavid in the lineup, Leon Draisaitl, and again, like the Rangers did at MSG back on October 14th, so just over a couple of weeks ago, they held the top guys down. I mean, Leon Draisaitl had 1 secondary assist. That's it. No points for Connor McDavid. So, give the Rangers credit there. But the Rangers, I would say that they deserve to win this game. They did. Now, the second period wasn't great, but also we'll talk about the way those goals scored. Very fluky, unfortunate circumstance type goals that were allowed. That wasn't really with necessarily the flow of play. It wasn't as if the Rangers were just getting totally hemmed in their own zone and that led to the goals. It wasn't quite like that. Even though I would say the second period was for sure their worst period, which is interesting because, like I said, and the stats kind of backed it up, the Rangers had only allowed 5 goals in the second period going into this game, which is the least in the NHL. Edmonton, on the flip side, had 17 goals, which is the second most in the NHL. So Edmonton kind of won that second period battle. But the good thing, to talk about the positives of the Rangers, is they're getting contributions from depth parts of the lineup. Because look, they're not getting it from the top guys, but you get a goal by Johnny Brodzinski, who, makes a nice play on a turnover, leading to a breakaway and scores in the first period. Braden Schneider, who I think has had struggles this season for different reasons, just being objective about it, but Braden Schneider had a really good game here. And he scores his first of the season. And Taylor Radish, the leading Ranger goal scorer, which is sad. It is, as the Rangers are going to head over to November hockey, and Taylor Radish is the most goals. Not really a good thing, but, he scores. And what ends up happening is Mike Sullivan makes line changes that really worked out going into the third period. So let's go there. Lineup was the same. So yet again, Matthew Robertson and Brennan Offen, the healthy scratches. I would expect that to remain the same going into the next game at Seattle. But the third period, and again, it's not that the Rangers were playing that badly, but I like what was done. And in some ways, this is what it might somewhat look like when Vincent Trocheck comes back to a degree. The main idea being is that Zibanejad goes to the wing as Miller is the center. They pretty much loaded up. And I say that kind of loosely because, they go with Panarin, Miller, Zibanejad, who have been, I don't want to lump Zibanejad in, although Zibanejad did not have a good game tonight. But they pretty much, go with a top-heavy approach. But the ironic thing is they get goals from lines 2 and 3. So they keep, just to put it out there, they kept the Carrick line together with Edstrom and Brodzinski. That line didn't play that much. It did not. Even as it was going on, and I didn't think they were bad. And look, like Sam Carrick had one of his best games at home against Edmonton. Tons of chances in that game, but just couldn't get it done. And here, like, look, Brodzinski scored um, a goal. Uh, Again, it was not so much a line effort; it was more of an individual thing by Brodzinski. But you know, they basically played less than the Laba line. But what ends up happening is, like I said, it's Miller centering Panarin and Zibanejad, and then they go with Laba centering um, Cooley and Lafreniere. And I kind of like that too. If Laba can handle it, Laba playing with just a little bit with a little bit more skill on his wings, right? Like the Laba line originally with Parson and Radish was doing a fine job. Really was. It was probably one of the more noticeably positive lines I felt through the first two periods. But they make that switch. In essence, Laba gets moved up, if you will. Um, and I like that. And here's what I also like. Connor Sherry essentially gets moved down. Now, look, they're pretty much rolling three lines. And it's Parsonen moving to the middle with Sherry and Radish. And that line looked good. I really think that they should definitely start with this lineup next game. I know, again, it's ironic because based on names, that first line feels like, okay, like you're not having enough sort of scoring juice on lines 2 and 3. And, you could make that argument. But you gotta like Sherry moving away from having like JT Miller on his line or Zibanejad or you know what I mean? Like, I like that alone. It's something against Sherry, just it is what it is. Like, he's gonna be more effective on a line with Parsonen and Radish. It makes more sense. The key is, can Laba handle this? Because it is a little bit more of an assignment. Like naturally he probably would get some more minutes. And that's, I think, kind of the holdup more than anything. But hey, he looked good in this game as well. So I would expect them to stick with this, and they should. Now, I don't know how long it'll last, but a lot of it makes sense. It really does for now. Um, so there's that. But um, I guess in terms of just more general talk, I thought that on defense, you know, an improvement of a game from Valkenine and Schneider pair, and they've had their struggles. Valkenine, of course, look, I mean, it led to him being a healthy scratch and Matthew Robertson coming in the lineup, but Valkenine, um, it wasn't always pretty. I felt like he got better as the game went along. Same thing with Braden Stein. I thought both of them did. Um, and yeah, so Igor Shesterkin in net for the Rangers versus Stuart Skinner. The thing with Igor, he looked shaky, and a couple of Igor's goals were not great, but he did make some big saves as well. So I guess you'd call it a mixed bag for Shesterkin, who gets the win, really made some game-saving stops late, um, to be certain, but also gives up a couple of goals that weren't great. And just beyond that, just didn't look quite as sharp as he had been a little bit earlier on. So, but hey, they still get the 2 points. So, first period, Rangers played pretty well. They did. And they're rewarded at the 5:44 mark. Johnny Brodzinski scores his first goal of the season unassisted. Brodzinski's he's a useful player. When utilized correctly, Brodzinski really makes a great read. I mean, Evan Bouchard makes the cross-ice pass, along the blue line. Brodzinski intercepts it and just goes down the other way and makes a nice backhand, a skilled goal. Brodzinski has some skill to his game. Is he someone that you want, in there every single night? Ideally, you don't. But do you feel as if it's a huge hit if he's going to be in there? Like, let's say, essentially he's taking Rempe's spot. You don't feel so bad about it. He can handle his own, and he scores the goal there to give the Rangers 1-0 lead. But then a real shitty goal that happens after that, because the Rangers were playing well. And it's 6:51, so a little more than a minute later, Darnell Nurse scores his second goal of the season from Wallman and former Ranger Jack Roslovic. Rangers turn it over in the offensive zone. I think it was Lafreniere who may have contributed to that. But I will say, Lafreniere had a lot more jump in this game. He did. He definitely was more noticeable for all the right reasons. So I want to give him some credit there, because I know he's been a whipping boy lately, and deservedly so. He has been, but I thought that this was an improvement. But it goes in the Rangers zone, and Darnell Nurse ends up pretty wide open at the right circle. But it's one that Igor has to stop. It goes through Shesterkin 5-hole, just kind of going from right to left, and it's one that he needed to have. Clear sight, no one in front of him, and Nurse just scores past Igor to tie it up at 1. Then we get into like more of the power play conversation. And here's the thing with the Rangers: they're not drawing many power plays, which isn't good. And when they get on them, it's been bad. Now, there's been some good offensive zone possession. We saw that last year too, and it wasn't good either. So I don't take much from that. At 17-16, Troy Stetcher's called for delay a game, and the Rangers don't score. Again, the power play is a major concern, and I think it's vitally important for this particular Rangers crew because scoring is not going to be their bread and butter, like to success. It won't be. It's going to have to be more on defense, more on smart play, and not. They're not going to win. Look, they're not going to win high scoring games. That is not going to be their way of winning. And so the power play, again, it's an extension of the problems that I have. Look, Artemi Panarin, who this was his birthday game, turning 34, Panarin was pretty quiet on this game and has been pretty quiet for most of the season. JT Miller gets the game-winning goal, but Miller, there was frustration, and even he admitted it. JT Miller doesn't look quite right. But still, I felt, but slight improvement from Miller, that said. Just a lot of more like of a timing thing, like little more speed. Look, JT Miller is not the fastest skater, but and a little bit more, sort of quickness to his game, I felt. But just, again, around the net, I'm looking for more from JT Miller. Right now, things just seem a tick off. Just some of the decision-making and just some of the timeliness with which he is either passing or shooting just feels off to me. So yeah, they don't score that power play, and we go to the second period tied 1-1. And now we go to the second period, which was definitely the Rangers' worst period. It wasn't to say that they got totally annihilated, but a very frustrating one at that, results-wise, for sure. So, and a lot to discuss too. So after a good shift by Noah Laba, he ends up taking a holding penalty. He holds Connor McDavid at 6:48. Now, I'm not surprised this was called. Now, did he actually hold him? Probably not. Like, McDavid kind of had him more than a lot, but there is that reputation thing. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And when I'm watching that, even before the ref raises his arm, I'm thinking, damn, like there's a good chance they're going to call out for penalty, and they do. So he didn't put himself in a great position, and it's unfortunate because he had a nice shift right before that. And here's the sad thing. And it goes against the ledger of the PK, who's been so good and really was good in this game as well. And it was, ranked 4th going into this game, but right at the very end, at 8:48, right as the Laba penalty is expiring, Matt Savoy scores his first NHL goal from Adam Henrique, who was playing his 1,000th NHL game, and Leon Draisaitl. And it's a goal where it's a bit of a scramble in front. I don't like that Will Borgen goes down. Again, you're just not useful, Like, I don't think that helps. And so Will Borgen's kind of just, stomach on the ice. And I think it's Henrique who kind of pokes at the puck in the direction of Savoy. And it goes in off of Savoy. Yeah, it's a nice effort play by Henrique, and it goes off of Savoy's skate. I am surprised that Mike Sullivan did not try to challenge this. Now, look, the detractor to that is if you don't get it right, you have this amazing number one power play unit of the Oilers. So I understand that side of it, but man, like that really looked like there was a chance. I don't know if it would have been overturned, but it was really, really close enough where I thought it was worth the challenge. And Sullivan chooses not to do that. And then to make matters worse, less than 2 minutes after. So in essence, the Oilers end up scoring anyway. And another weird goal. So the Oilers take a 3-1 lead on a goal by Darnell Nurse, the second of the game, third of the season, from Howard and Wallman. And this was a play where not a great job by Igor. Tough angle by Darnell Nurse. Had some room, kind of redirects the pass from Howard to Shesterkin, and the puck ends up sitting on the top of Igor's left pad. And he's just going back and back into the net. And ultimately, they review it, and it's a goal. Now, I think they would have reviewed this regardless. It didn't help that it was a TV commercial timeout. That's just me, but like I think it probably gets reviewed regardless, but um correctly called. I was when I'm seeing it live, I'm thinking like, fuck, there's a good chance that that puck is actually in. But what I was hoping for, and what happens a lot of the times, it's just stuck in his pants to the point where you can't even see the puck. It's literally like under his jersey or in the inside of the pads. But it was sitting right on there. So clear evidence, good goal. And so for Edmonton to score the ways they did was a gut punch because again, they were weird goals. It's so, and look, that was another bad Igor one. Look, Igor for goals 1 and 3, not great at all. But really from then on out, makes some really big saves to keep it where it was. Um, so now it's 3-1 Edmonton, and the Rangers get their second and last power play chance. Isaac Howard trips Yuso Parson at 13-18, and they don't score. Like, I'm not gonna belabor and go through it again, but again, that power play is a problem. And so we go to the third down 3-1. And you can't be feeling too great about it because look, at this point, here we are again. The Rangers are not scoring goals. It's a situation where they scored one. I'm not going to count the empty net stuff. They scored one goal against Vancouver, scored one goal against Calgary, did score a bunch against the Sharks, but you have to take that somewhat with a grain of salt, given the opponent. One goal against Minnesota, like just so many times where they were shut out or only scored one goal. And it felt like that was going to happen again. And to make matters worse, at the 28-second mark of the third, Adam Fox is called for tripping Darnell Nurse. A real unfortunate sequence for Fox where he takes a puck to the face and he's kind of sliding down. And in doing so, he takes down Nurse with him. And so, look, it could have ended right then and there. Things weren't going right for the Rangers. Start of the third period, but the Rangers kill it off. Again, you got to give a lot of credit to the penalty kill. And they weren't done there. We'll talk about them again. But it keeps it at 3-1, and the Rangers get their game going. And those line changes really, really, really made a difference. And the one that really starts it off, goal-wise, is at 8:18. Braden Schneider scores his first goal of the season from Cooley and Vakanainen. And it's a good job by Cooley going down the left wing and taking it to the net. Now, look, he got kind of lucky, but he doesn't actually get a shot off. It's poke checked by Stuart Skinner, but right to the streaking Braden Schneider. That's the best part of this, that Braden Schneider said, hey, and look, I think the score has something to do with that. Schneider decides to go all the way in. It was kind of a surprise, to be honest with you. Schneider is able to essentially get past Nugent Hopkins and just score right kind of to the open net. Skinner did a nice play on it, not knowing that Schneider was coming in. And, again, give some credit to Cooley for taking it to the net. That's the thing. The Rangers are trying to be a north-south team. A lot of the goals the Rangers had tonight were a result of that. So that makes it 3-2. And then they score again. At 12:04, they tied up. It's Taylor Radish. Again, team-leading fifth goal, assisted by Sherry. And this was one that was a nice job by this line, centered by Parsonen, where Sherry makes a good play at the blue line again. Evan Bouchard fucked up. I mean, Bouchard's if you're an Oiler fan, Bouchard's got to be a frustrating one, right? Obviously, the offensive stats speak for themselves and the Bouch bomb and all that stuff. But just watching him a lot, there's a lot of defensive mistakes and key turnovers. And Sherry makes a nice play. And Taylor Radish is able to use a little bit of speed, get to the center of the ice, and takes a shot and scores. Not a good goal by Stuart Skinner, though. This was one that Skinner definitely wants to have back. But, hey, you put yourself in these positions, and you get rewarded for it. So the Rangers tied up at 3. Still a lot of time left in regulation, though. About 8 minutes to go. The Rangers were playing pretty well. Like, playing smart, getting their chances. And then, unfortunately, at 19-19 in the third, Mika Zibanejad high sticks Jack Roslovic. Just a terrible penalty. In what was not a great game by Zibanejad. It's a penalty you can't have. The puck wasn't even anywhere near where the high stick happened. Zibanejad was just kind of lazy with where his stick was. I'm thinking about this more now. I mean, Roslovic was looking for a 4-minute, which would have been a big difference. I'd have to look into that more as far as whether Roslovic had a case. It seemed like maybe he did. But they do call it a minor 2-minute penalty on Zibanejad, which is a scary thought in the regulation sense and overtime. Like 40 seconds left against that power play, but the Ranger penalty kills off the first 40 seconds, so they get the point. go to overtime, but still a minute and 20 left of 4-on-3. But, you get a lot of good Igor saves. PK just does a really good job positionally. And look, you don't have Zibanejad out there, who's one of the PKers as well, but they get it done. And then it leads to 3-on-3. And the reason for that is because there was a whistle. Shesterkin covers the puck right as the Zibanejad penalty was over. I was kind of thinking, hey, I didn't trust the Rangers 3-on-3 against this Oiler team. Granted, they just had McDavid and Draisaitl on the ice, but still, I would have almost preferred 4-on-4. But hey, I was wrong, and I'm glad to be wrong. The Rangers win the game. It took some time. There was some bad turnovers on both sides, honestly. Panarin, one of them, and Zibanejad, I think Jack Roslovic on the Edmonton side, but it ends up being a game-winning goal by JT Miller, who had a lot of chances earlier in the game. I've spoken about him ad nauseum. Like, him and Panarin's struggles are very different. And Miller, like, he's trying to do the right things, but it's been a frustrating watch. The eye test has not been great for JT Miller, but he has been brutally honest. Like, I respect that in terms of just self-deprecating and being honest, like that his confidence isn't there right now. And I'm hoping that this can get him going. His third goal of the season from Braden Schneider. So Schneider with a 2-point game, and Alexis Lafreniere, which that was, good to see him get on the score sheet just because I felt like he was moving his legs. He was making things happen. And it's really just a simple pass from Schneider to JT Miller. And, with McDavid and Draisaitl and Bouchard on the ice, not the, looking more for offense, they kind of just let Miller just go up the middle. And I think it kind of caught Miller by surprise almost. I mean, to the point where Miller had to take the shot. I mean, and they had passed up a couple, not Miller, but early in the third on the PK. And again, that's why the PK deserves even more credit. They had two 2-on-1 chances. One where Zibanejad passed up the shot, trying to pass to Cooley, and one where Radish passed up the shot, trying to pass it to Miller. Here, it's just kind of JT on his own. Trying to think who's the one that kind of messes this up. I feel as if it was probably Draisaitl. And Bouchard just doesn't really cover for him. And Miller ends up just on the forehand, wrists it by Skinner, and the Rangers win 4-3. Great comeback, down by 2 on the road against a good Oiler team, who the Rangers had lost to just a couple weeks prior. The line changes really did help a lot in the third period. And I hope that for JT Miller, this can get him going because he needed this pretty badly. And yeah, so now the Rangers 2-1 on this road trip, 1 game to go at Seattle. And Seattle's been playing fairly well. They are 5-2-3. So a lot of close games, just kind of based on the fact that they only have 3 regulation wins out of the 5 wins. They, again, have lost those 3 overtime /shootout games. So clearly you may expect a Ranger Kraken close game, and they've been good at home. Now their last loss was a home loss in overtime to Montreal, but they're 3-1 at home. They'll also have a little bit more rest, whereas the Rangers, will only have kind of a day off in between. For Seattle, 3 in between. So for Seattle hadn't played since Tuesday, and then it's a Saturday night game. So they should have maybe the fresher legs, but the Rangers, they want to finish off this road trip strong. And it's the difference between, if they can somehow get the 2 points here, that's really flipping the script in a pretty big way. Now, the way the Rangers have kind of been this year, they are sort of due for a loss, right? The Rangers don't have more than a 2-game winning streak this year, if memory serves correct. Pretty sure that's true. But 5-5-2 now, needing wins in what is a very strong Eastern Conference. Like, this is a pretty deep and pretty competitive East. And, my thoughts on the Rangers still are not overly high. I want to see what they do when they get back home, because that's just been a total kind of nightmare. Only having just crazy, only having, oh no, right. They ended up, sorry, I forgot about the San Jose game, but they only had that goal through 4 games. They lost that game to the Sharks in overtime, but either way, a really, really nice win in Edmonton. I like the comeback ability. That was something that really was eluding them last year. I still want to see that late game comeback. I still want to see the 6-on-5 goalie pull. That, again, that's an extension of the power play. But just the fact that they go into the third down by 2, and, first time the Rangers had done that down by 2 goals going to the third and getting a win since the Rangers-Islanders game in the Stadium Series at MetLife Stadium in 2024. So, yeah, Rangers get it done. JT Miller gets the game-winning goal, and now the Rangers will finish their road trip against the Seattle Kraken.